I'm meteorologist Nicholas Herboso with Fox 10 News, a tropical update recorded here on Sunday, talking about Hurricane Beryl and also other things in the tropics. So this morning and this afternoon, we've had hurricane hunters in Hurricane Beryl. And the discovery was that we had a storm that was a Category 4. It rapidly strengthened overnight last night and into this morning. Now we have winds of 130 miles per hour, making it a Category 4 with a central pressure of 960 millibars. This storm is continuing to move west rather quickly at 21 miles per hour, now only around 300 miles to the east-southeast of Barbados. This has been an impressive storm that has been breaking records. This is the earliest Atlantic Category 4 that we have seen on record. And believe it or not, with a 130 miles per hour Category 4 storm, this is the strongest June hurricane on record in the Atlantic. Also the first major hurricane east of the Lesser Antilles, and the farthest east we've had a hurricane observed in the Atlantic in the month of June. Lots of records with Hurricane Beryl. Looking at the structure of this thing, it is extremely impressive. We have witnessed the rapid intensification. One of the reasons we had this rapid intensification, because the storm developed a very well-defined core overnight last night. Now we have seen the eye clearing out. We have a well-defined eyewall with strong thunderstorms around it. You can see this in the infrared satellite, and this is the 1-minute updated imagery, so you're getting a really good picture of what's going on. Very recently, we've actually seen more strong thunderstorms developing around the eye, building up. You see those peaks of black for just a little bit around this very clear eye. A reminder that the eye is relatively calm, while right around the eye you have the eye wall. That is the core of the strongest winds in the hurricane. This is important because as this thing tracks to the north and west here, the west-northwest, the exact position of this core will determine which islands get the strongest winds. Let's take a look at this wind forecast. Because this is such a strong storm with winds of 130 miles per hour and it is expected to remain a Category 4 hurricane as it approaches the islands, there's going to be an area of very significant, possibly catastrophic hurricane force wind impacts. This is the National Weather Service forecast, and you can see, or National Hurricane Center forecast, excuse me, and you see that red area. That is where we have hurricane force winds. Likely we will see possibly major hurricane force winds somewhere in there as well. The Grenadines and Grenada seem to be some of the focus areas for the strongest winds. Catastrophic hurricane force winds is one of the key points that the National Hurricane Center is advertising, depending on exactly where the center of the storm goes. A couple other things to note as the storm approaches the islands. We're expecting dangerous storm surge along with damaging waves. And of course, the highest risk is right around the core of the storm. So we will be watching as the storm wobbles towards the islands very closely. Right now, we have hurricane warnings that are in effect for some of the islands here. Once again, I think the highest concern, the Grenadines, St. Vincent, and Grenada, but also Barbados has that hurricane warning, and we could see at least hurricane force gusts there. Residents in the islands need to be taking precautions and pretty much get everything done by tonight, because that is when we're going to see the onset of tropical storm, then eventually hurricane conditions. You need to be prepared. You need to be where you need to be at that time. And our thoughts go out to those in the Windward Islands dealing with this storm. Now we have to look beyond the islands here. As this thing moves into the Caribbean, we have a Category 4, remaining a Category 4. Winds of 130 miles per hour. You notice some slight weakening there. And then looking longer out in the track, we start to see a little bit of uncertainty. That track gets a little bit wider, but for the most part, we understand that we're going to see a track very near Jamaica by midweek next week. Wednesday, 7 a.m., we have a Category 3 hurricane to the southeast of Jamaica there. So possible impacts to Jamaica. Residents in Jamaica will be keeping a very, very close eye on this, of course, because we could see the storm take the northerly side of that forecast cone. So all the big islands keeping a close eye on things there. A little bit more uncertainty does develop beyond that as well towards the end of the week. Indications are that we see impacts in the Yucatan as a hurricane approaches, but there is still some uncertainty, and that is why the track is wider. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that in a second. Also, you notice the weakening in the forecast track here from the National Hurricane Center. We are going to see some shear introduced with this system. So you can see Beryl moving across the eastern Caribbean there. These brighter colors indicating some shear developing. We actually have a little bit of a weakness in the ridge that is actually pushing this thing west. This weakness helps to develop a little bit more wind shear. This may impact the system. However, understand the stronger the system is getting into the Caribbean, the more resistant it will be to the wind shear. So you can see the center of Beryl very close to Jamaica. That would mean impacts to Jamaica, something that they're going to have to watch very closely. And it looks like wind shear continues to play a part in this system as it nears the Yucatan Peninsula and maybe as it crosses the Yucatan Peninsula into the Gulf of Mexico. Here's the overall steering flow. We have a ridge of high pressure to the north of Beryl. That is what's keeping it moving west. However, around Tuesday, we do notice some weakness that develops to the north. Give it a little bit of a push to the north, but for the most part, it continues on its westerly track near Jamaica. Then our attention turns to the blocking high pressure ridge over the southeastern United States. This will keep this storm moving off to the west. You can see it here as I put it into motion. However, you notice the blocking ridge over the southeast does weaken ever so slightly. We could see in the very long range forecast here, I'm talking 7 days out or beyond, where we see some start lifting here of the track, maybe a bit of a northward turn in the far end of the forecast here. But this is a long way out. We have a long time to watch this. One good thing to note, we are not expecting a sharp turn to the north like that over, say, the Bahamas or Florida. That is a result of the ridge that is in place there. So you can see this reflected in the forecast models. Remember, these are spaghetti models that show where the center of the storm may go, very near Jamaica. Jamaica will watch this closely. You notice some models showing a slightly more northerly track. The Canadian model did not have the best start on this storm. However, it is still notable that we do have a couple doing a northerly track. Either way, you see a pretty nice solid grouping of the models heading into the Yucatan Peninsula, north of Belize there, something to watch very closely for interest in the Yucatan. This crosses the Yucatan, gets into the Gulf of Mexico, could cross near the tip of the Yucatan if it is a stronger storm. There is that possibility. That is why we talk about the uncertainty in the long-range forecast. Then we look ahead, some models showing that slight turn. We will watch and see if that happens. That depends on the strength of the ridge. We will know more about the forecast track in the long range hopefully soon, especially by Tuesday and Wednesday as this gets into the Central Caribbean. This forecast, as it enters the Gulf of Mexico and or the Yucatan, will become a little bit clearer at that point. So residents along the Gulf Coast in Mexico, you will have a better idea at that point. We want you to stay tuned to the forecast as always. And if you're along the Gulf Coast, make sure you have your hurricane plan in place as always. It is a great idea. Treat this as an exercise. Make sure you have things ready to go just in case it is ever needed. All right, now we have other things to talk about in the tropics as well. A couple areas of interest, one of them following Beryl and one of them in the southwestern Gulf of Mexico, actually with an imminent landfall likely on Monday morning. So this is Invest 94L that we're zooming into here. Has a high chance of development, could briefly become a tropical depression. Hurricane hunters have been investigating this thing. The main impacts will be rainfall. We are not expecting very much out of this. This is not going to be tracking to the north. It is just going to be moving into Mexico, with the main threat being flooding and heavy rainfall. Residents there will need to pay attention. It is a very active time here in the tropics as we end June and get into July. We will always keep track of it here at Fox 10. I'm meteorologist Nicholas Herboso.